Hello everyone, welcome very much to this session on analytics for open access books. My name is Kathleen Folger. I'm the Electronic Resources Officer at the University of Michigan, and I have two co-panelists today who are going to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Rupert Gatti. I'm an economist at Trinity College in Cambridge, but also co-founder of Open Book Publishers, and with this involved in an opera's work on usage metrics.
Hello, I'm Sven Fund. I'm the Managing Director of Knowledge Unlatched since 2016, so not the founder, it was Francis Pinter. And I'm here to present a little bit on the works of the on analytics that we have done over the last few years.
So, as I said, we're here talking about analytics for open access books. And so one of my friends teases me frequently because I am a very linear person. I believe there needs to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so this idea of looking at analytics and usage statistics to me felt very much like the middle of the story. And so I'm going to step back a little bit and talk about what criteria we use when we are evaluating as a library whether to invest in an open access initiative. And in addition to my own kind of personality flaws, which caused me to want to begin here, I would also say I have some concerns about usage statistics and how accurately they can reflect usage of open access materials. So I think I'm going to encourage us as this presentation goes through to think about other metrics or ways of evaluating open access we could use. So some of the things we use in evaluating and determining whether to support an open access initiative might actually be something we would look at when we want to make those evaluations. So first and foremost, as a library, when we're looking at an opportunity to support an open access initiative, we look at the quality of the content. It might be the quality of individual titles, might be, for instance, with something like Knowledge Unlatched, where you have multiple publishers involved. We look at the quality of the publishers. So we see Knowledge Unlatched, we see University of Michigan Press is involved. We think, well, they get the best presses, so we know there's some quality there. We look at individual authors, what we know about what they've published. So we really, fundamentally, the most important thing is the quality of the content. Is this something we want to support? We think the content needs to be made broadly available. We also consider how that project is in alignment with our campus programs and also any missions and goals we have. You might have the best large animal husbandry open access collection in the world. We don't have a veterinary medicine program. We're not going to support your program. But if you come to us with physics, biology, philosophy, any number of other subject areas that are in alignment with our academic programs, then we're certainly going to want to consider supporting that initiative. We look at the cost to participate. Is what you are asking for us to contribute, do we think it's worthwhile? Sometimes we look at it on a simple cost per volume basis. If you're asking institutions at our size to contribute X amount of dollars, what is that as a cost per volume? How does that compare with what we spend for non-open access content? Is it comparable? Is it more? Is it less? But we want to get a sense of how the cost compares to what we would normally pay. We look at campus support. Are there advocates for this initiative on our campus? Are there faculty who are broadly supportive of it? Is there a provost or a president or a dean who thinks this is important and wants to encourage us to support it? And actual real support, not the kind of, some vendors will provide a forum and the faculty member can say, oh, I encourage you to buy this thing. Like actual cheerleaders for the project who are supporting it. We also look at peer support. Is Harvard's, we look at our peers, so Harvard or Wisconsin or Illinois, are our colleagues at those institutions, have they already gone through a vetting process and decided they want to support it? We don't want to get left behind. So if they've said yes, then we're probably going to want to say yes as well. Another thing we look at is how much it costs, the staff time to manage. It's all well and good to have open access monographs, but it's not well and good if our users can't discover it. Are there records available? Can we load them into our catalog? So it's not enough just to produce the material. The material has to be discoverable. And then this last one is kind of wishy-washy because we're not certified public accountants. And so this is very much a kind of gut instinct. We look at the business model. You know, how are you intending to fund your open access initiative? Does it sound like it makes sense and is actually a viable thing? So we look at all of these things before we even make a decision about whether we're going to support. Some colleagues at some peer institutions recently were having a conversation online about whether to continue support for an open access initiative. And several of them came back and said, yeah, I'm thinking that we might not support it because use is kind of low. And I was surprised to hear that. And one of the reasons is because I actually don't look very closely at the usage statistics for the open access initiatives we're currently supporting. One of the biggest reasons is there are real problems with trying to measure overall use for an open access product. The biggest thing is the content can live on multiple platforms. The idea of open access is it is just free to the world. So it may start its life on the open book publisher platform or on JSTOR or wherever, but it can end up in any number of places. And the statistics you're able to get from the vendor may or may not include all of those other platforms. It could very well be living on a Canvas or a Moodle site for a faculty member. So those numbers are not going to reflect all the use. We just know that. There are different, and I think Rupert's going to talk about this a little bit more, so I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I'm just going to say that measuring use is a lot harder than it sounds like it should be. There are interface design, how you count, what you're using to count can actually affect those numbers. So when you see a number, you think, oh, this is a solid thing, and we can rely on it, but they're actually not as reliable as you might think. And that's when you're looking at global use. So my colleagues were worried about local use. There hasn't been very much local use. So how do we measure local use of open access materials? Some vendors, we've sent our IP addresses. So if one of our users is at our campus IP address, their use is registered. Well, I don't know about your campus, my faculty like to go home at the end of the day. And they are no longer, although sometimes it's pretty late, but they are no longer at a campus IP address. A way to try to get around that is using geolocation data, but again, I don't know about your faculty, but my faculty also like to leave town sometimes. And so those methods, it's an attempt to try to capture that information, but it's not going to capture it 100%. And we just have to realize that and acknowledge that and take that into consideration if we're thinking about usage statistics. And then another thing is we've been especially interested in supporting humanities and social sciences monograph publishing. Especially humanities, but social science as well, when it takes them a while sometimes to find their audience. We recently did an evidence-based program with a publisher who mainly does social sciences. The top 5 books for the most use, the average age for them was 10 years. So if you are looking at the newly published open access monographs in the first 2-3 years, you are not getting a sense of what the actual use is going to be for that title. So I want to argue that open access is not business as usual. We are trying to change scholarly publishing. So we need to, if we're trying to institute systemic change, we need to think about different ways of evaluating whether they work. Why would we use like a counter report, which is what we use for our current publishing system, if we're trying to build a brand new publishing system? I think we need to think globally, not just locally. So we need to think about not just our own users, but the users around the world who could benefit from what we're doing. We need to think long-term. Like, I know we have to manage budgets from one year to the next, but we need to recognize that systemic change, actually, surprisingly, it can be slow. And so we cannot expect immediate results. We need to be in it for the long haul. And finally, I just want to acknowledge that I recognize I'm coming from the University of Michigan, which is extraordinarily well-resourced. So some of you may be thinking, oh, it's easy for her to say. Don't worry about local users, just throw money at the problem. And what I would say is, yes, it's true, we are well-resourced, but we still make decisions. We don't support everything that comes our way. We use those criteria I talked about at the outset to make those decisions. So I would encourage you, whatever your budget reality is, to use those same kinds of criteria to make your decisions about what you're going to support or not. So I would love to say I have the answer to this question of what are the right metrics for open access. And the reality is I don't, but I hope as we go through the panel today and then have our question and answer time, that maybe we can start moving to answers to this question. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I must say, I'm tempted actually to sit down and just ask you to keep talking, because that was fantastic. And I think you've said everything that I think I wanted to say, and all I can do is just add a little bit of full of gloss or floss or something around the edge. I don't know. It's sort of so I'm Rick Geddes. Before co-founder of Open Book Publishers, we publish open access monographs primarily in the humanities and the social sciences, and we have published now about 150 titles. We've been going for about 10 years. But we've also been very interested in exactly the problem that you said, is that a lot of our books are being hosted in lots of different places. And we are interested in the usage stats that come from them, as much as anything, because we need to make a case for open access sometimes. And some of these usage metrics are quite useful for us in making the case. And so the sorts of things that we're going to use, we have been using metrics for, to try and look at the number of people that are engaging with the works and what sort of countries they've been engaging with them. The differences between the formats that they've been using to engage with it, and the time, how things have, the dynamics of usage, which you mentioned as well. And just to reiterate what you're saying, and we'll see this build-up of usage over time. We're not seeing a fall-off in usage in books that we published 10 years ago. The profile for usage is very different to the profile of sales. And so, and finally, we're asked by universities to produce usage reports, and I'm incredibly concerned about it, because we're asked to do things, to do these counter reports, and we produce these numbers. But as I'll go through, I don't know what the numbers mean, and so I don't know what a library is meant to do with the report that we give them, except possibly I don't know what the numbers are, and we'll go on to those later. But I mean, we give some numbers, but. So this is one of a book. Just very briefly, this is a book. It's designed as a textbook for A-level students in the UK, which is the final level of high school in the UK. Ethics for A-level. It's got A-level written on the title. This is a textbook designed for UK students, and we have a little thing at the bottom. I don't know if you just under the tabs there, it says, to see how this book has been read around the world, click here. And we used to have a thing that said, this book has been accessed 25,274 times. But that's a meaning, that's a number, it looks like a precise number, and it might mean something, but it's aggregating whole lots of different stuff, and we'll go through it and see in a minute. And sort of a badge, and it's a big badge or a small badge. It's just so we got rid of that number, and we said, go and have a look at the usage stats. And if you have a look at the usage stats, you get to something like this. And now this is beginning to be a little bit more meaningful, I hope, in that there are 3 platforms in which you can read the book online that we're aware of, and that, no, there's more than that than we're aware of. There's 3 that we're able to collect stats on. And those are Google Books and our own HTML reader on our own website and a PDF reader that we've got on our own website. And so these are the sorts of usage that we're getting from that. And I'll come back and just think a little bit about what those numbers are, because I still don't know what those numbers are. And then we've got this sort of free downloads, which are downloads from platforms we know it can be downloaded, Awaken and our own download from our own website and places like that. And once again, those are PDF, EPUB, or MOBI downloads aggregated together that have occurred. A couple of things to note over that is there's been a build-up of usage of this over time. It was only published in 2017, but 2018 had a lot more. So far, 2019, that's only through till now. It's picking up traction, and you can also see that there's been most of the downloads and most of the activity for this book seems to be happening from our website. Now that's not the same. Other books have got very different profiles, but for this one, it seems that quite a lot of the traffic is actually coming through our website, which is quite odd for that we're monitoring. If we broke you can click on. It's all live there, so anybody who's interested can click on this, and you can get monthly data as well. So we can plug up the monthly data there as well. And again, you can see that up through till June, it was getting about 2,000, 2,500 views of some nature. The online readers, July, August, it falls down a little bit. July, it's a textbook, it's summertime. But then September comes and it suddenly doubles. And it looks like the new school year has come through and they're using this book more than they were last school year. And so, so that for us is quite interesting. It means that maybe there's schools that are picking up on this now, and we should be looking a bit more to see how it's being picked up. If we look geographically, and again on our plot, you can click on these and get a breakdown of what the various platforms are. But you can see that actually the highest use of those that we have geographic data for is the US. This is an A-level textbook designed for UK high-skilled students in the UK. It's being picked up by first-year university courses in the US. That's where the big use of this book has come up from. Okay, so we did put a little bit of effort into advertising it, but and making it aware through Open Textbook Network and things. But for us, this is all quite interesting data. Yeah, but the numbers. Just how we're going for time. So some of the things that we can pick up here is it's had nearly 50,000 readers in 2.5 years. It's increasing over time. We've got this US prevalence. If we look at book downloads, it's about 20% of downloads versus online readers. So there's people engaging with it online quite a lot. We can have a look at mobile. A lot of them are accessing it on mobile. Okay, but now we come down to these numbers. What in the world are these things? And the first thing is, we're getting this data from things on our website. One of the first things you have to do is you have to clear out the bots. A bot is a sort of an ill-defined term of some sort of automated processing, and it's not always clear to me that automated processing is not a useful use of the book. So we've defined that automated processing shouldn't be, so we can get rid of the bots. But how well we do that, this is a significant proportion that we get rid of because that's declared to be a bot. So secondly, we've got to define what a use is. And there's lots of different names. So what we do is a session. If somebody's having a look at lots of bits and pieces of the book on our site, then it's one read, and we use a 30-minute definition, the same as Google Books does. Counter uses a 10-second definition. So there's a big difference about what a use is. Is it a session? Is it a click? Is it an engagement? So we're using a different number, but for counter reports we have to use a 10-second one, and we get bigger numbers. So there's lots of different ways of getting measures on our website, what have I got here? So there's just a book that I plucked out the difference between Google Analytics and counter numbers, and it's about 25% higher with counter. Okay, then there's a bunch of other issues that go on with it. Should we be aggregating usage stats across different platforms? Because different platforms have different ways of engaging with content. If we split up our chapters into lots of places, or JSTOR does produce 27 different chapters for our books, then you know what, you'll generate lots of data because people have got to go to all of those chapters to read the book, and so you'll get lots of data if you do it like that. But if you let people access it once, you get one click. So it makes a lot about how you do that. How you combine chapter level data with a whole book data is really, really problematic. And we've seen Springer Nature do the book metrics, I think they call it, and they do this bizarre thing of saying, well, we'll just we'll multiply a whole book download by the total number of chapters in the book. So that means that if somebody does clicks on the whole book and there's 20 chapters in the book, they get 20 clicks. And so, it really matters now whether or not how people are behaving about how many clicks are being generated. And it's impossible to pull back the data and work out actually what happened and generated those clicks. If you use the DOI resolver to go to an actual rendition of the book, then you get a usage click. For us, our DOI resolver goes to a website. It goes to the web page so that the reader can choose which version of the book that they want. That doesn't generate a click. We could amplify our clicks a lot by making sure the DOI resolves to a PDF or something. And the reader doesn't like that because they wanted the HTML and they might not know it's there, but we get a lot of clicks. And so, okay. And of course, this is all pretty problematic, but there's a lot of places like library repositories and places where we don't get stats, so we're missing a lot, and that's a problem. It comes back to how do libraries want to assess our data. We just don't have the data for the library repository. Well, that might be an important source for the library to worry about. Okay, we can also think about, if we wanted to, gaming the stats, and as I've mentioned, some of the things that we could do. But I asked our developer how long it would take him to write a bot that wouldn't be picked up by the classic bot click things, to be able to generate any number that I wanted on our books. And his answer was about 5 minutes. So if we're going to actually put something really meaningful and assess the quality of content or the quality of the authors or the quality of the publishers based on the number of clicks, you know what, I can generate any click you want. Just tell me the money you'll pay me for that click, and I'll give you that click. So we just got to be really careful about what it is that we're doing about usage stats in an online world. And then, in my -1 second, I just want to mention that we've got some open source software and open source data definitions to be able to help people harvest these things, and there's the website there. It's all part of the EU-funded OPERAS project. Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't think that I have to add too much. Maybe I'll just do it in 5 minutes. Let's see. Because a lot has been said already. I think it's very clear from what Kathleen and Rupert said, is that this is not an exact science. It can only be an indication what we are doing in usage reporting and measures. Let me see what's full screen. There we are. I think first of all, metrics in science evaluation, research evaluation is a problem anyway. So we all know that you can discuss impact factors, Hirsch factors, cost per download, all of these kinds of things. And it is a history of misunderstandings as well. So starting from that, I would never go to a set of numbers and just say this is good and this is bad, but only this is probably better or worse. It's clear that today metrics are not perfect, neither for open access nor for any other type of content, I would say. Kathleen knows better. But I would say that in the open access context, we feel that we have to prove a case. And that's something that is less so an issue in the paywall content by now. Still, we know that many libraries base decisions, at least in parts, on numbers, as you have said. So we are trying to provide and have thought a lot over the last years of on what we can do, how we can make this a better decision-making process and support it for those who want to use it. In the end, it's the library. I think, first of all, looking at numbers, and I try to do this here, if you have the same set of numbers, cost per download, in a discipline like orthopedics or medicine compared to philosophy of mind, you see immediately that it doesn't make any sense to compare those two figures. And only those who have very broad portfolios, very big systems, might have a kind of average that you then can compare and draw any conclusions from that. So does that mean that we should completely forget about numbers? I'm afraid it doesn't work. It's a little bit like metadata, because libraries will say this is all fine, but before we see all the data and the metadata, the usage data, we will not continue. What we have done at KU from 2013, and I want to show you this journey because I find it really interesting, is very much driven by libraries actually, and also by publishers who are getting more and more interested in their numbers, of course, and trying to understand what this means in their decision making within the publishing house. So first we started with institutional usage data. You have referred to that as well, Rupert, and it was very clear in the first days that usage was tiny, minimal on a title level, like 15 downloads at a major institution. And we said, you know, that can't be, because if we look at geolocational data, at Google data, it is a very different pattern. So we needed to marry them somehow, and it was already clear at that point that this marriage wouldn't be something very lucky, because you would compare very different sets of numbers. So that's why we started at KU to call it interactions rather than full text downloads or views or whatever. So we are mixing on purpose and knowingly these numbers and just resolve them in the second step. So if somebody really wants to dive deeper, he or she can see all the details where the usage comes from. We provided quarterly reports at that time already. As I said, in 15 we added geolocational data and tried to cover the usage outside of IP ranges, which we thought was especially for the global south, for example, important, because we wouldn't simply have IP ranges in a lot of countries that we could really cover and in that way reflect the impact of open access as a whole. In 2018 we launched Open Access Analytics, also referring to your point, Rupert, where we tried to consolidate usage back from all those platforms where we would deposit the content, meaning JSTOR, Project Muse, OAPN, different publisher platforms, and so on. And again, you can all look at it, it's all around, but you will see that it is a lot of detail, and the number that we can generate, the interactional number, is just an indication that helps to compare titles, disciplines, and whatever you want to compare. We have tried in this year during this year to improve the impact reports, work with benchmarking, because that was our ultimate goal, to help libraries and publishers to really identify how are my titles doing relative to other titles in philosophy of mind, to stay with the example, so that they would know whether they would rather make content open access in philosophy first, or in linguistics, or in theology, or wherever. So it's an internal benchmarking that we can cater to, and we have seen the first test that I'll show you a little bit later in that. We are adding, at the beginning of next year, citation data, so a different set of data, let's call them qualitative data, not quantitative data, to basically see what happens with this content. Is it really being picked up by researchers in their work, or is it just being looked at or crawled by bots or whatever that Rupert can program in 5 minutes? That's really impressive. I didn't know. Social listening certainly is an issue. I have to admit I'm not a big fan of alt metrics as a discipline. I don't mean the company, but the discipline, because I am not really sure whether that has a lot of meaning long-term in the research process, at least not only. And we are trying to add also transactional data when it comes, for example, to journals, not talking about books, to see what the cost per download metrics could be if a library would apply them not only to their own holdings, but overall to a journal article that has been funded through Knowledge Unleashed, because that makes a big difference. We are trying to launch impact reports wherever we can, and I can only invite everybody, if you're interested in usage data, to the degree that we can share them, we are happy to share them for all kinds of research that you are doing. We are interested in looking into that together with you. Yeah, we've just done that for Open Access Week, for example, in a very condensed way across continents. Where does usage come from? And we can certainly break that down to disciplines or book packages or whatever. Country benchmarking is something which is really interesting to us. You alluded to that as well. There's a lot of reports in Google Analytics. We can do a little bit more here as well. Also see within countries what the usage is. We have then some funny comparisons that the Free University of Berlin has as many interactions as the whole of Ireland, Republic of Ireland. Yeah, the question is, does it have a meaning, and what is the meaning? What do we make out of it? But at least I think it's clear for what we see from the data, that some institutions that really push open access, that are champions of open access, make a significant difference in picking up the usage. So it is about librarians communicating with their patrons about open access, and thus driving usage and hopefully making patrons more happy about the content. Is there a world beyond metrics? Well, I hope so. So we feel that pure usage or interactions is just the first step that we are making. It is incomplete and imperfect, but it's the best what we have. I think within our industry, and there are certain projects, Rupert mentioned them, there were projects here in North America last year as well. We need to get to a point where we generate useful information and comparable information. There's simply no point that all these platforms report in different structures. That is a difficulty that we can only overcome at the point of the generation of the data and not at the whatever analysis afterwards. And we hear a lot of interest, and I wanted to share that as well because it goes back to your point, Kathleen. We hear a lot of interest right now in comparing open and paywall content. So doing benchmarking between those two categories. And I think that leads us to your question back. How can that work? How can we compare two completely different animals on at least one basis, so that for you and also for publishers it generates some kind of meaning and helps you in decision making? Thanks for your attention.
Looks like we have about 5 minutes for questions, and I already see a hand.
First, I wanted to say thank you for just such an excellent session. My name's Maureen Adamson, I'm a consultant, and I've been studying some of the practical realities of what happens with open access, which I've been calling water, water everywhere and nary a drop to drink. Because it's out there, but it's out there in potentially different systems. And the metadata itself, when you have a bunch of subscription systems, the metadata, how does that get down into the systems that librarians are using, and what is the impact on usage statistics when it can be in so many multiple places. I think this is just great what you did, and my question is, it seems to me that we've just been enjoying having this period in time where there actually were usage statistics that had somewhat a bit of reliability, but it can be very misleading for librarians who are making decisions about what to acquire and not. And all I've come up with is that usage statistics moving to another layer of how you're going to get them, process them, and make sure that they're meaningful. I'm wondering what you all who've been looking at this think would be the next steps, and how that has to be communicated to librarians so that they're not misreading the information that they're using.
That's why that slide in my presentation was blank, so I don't know if Sven has something to say.
Well, I think the message that I'd like to get through to librarians is not look for a metric. That we're painting a picture here with a bunch of different colored pixels. and keeping the pixels separate and thinking about the picture that you can paint and the information that you can get from all those different colors is knowledge. It's a knowledge extraction, but don't try and say, you know, I just want one number, and to engage with what are the metrics there, and that takes a step back. What we were trying to do with the operas is say that the data that you're collecting, I don't think that we can have a single standard, but what we do need to tag beside the data is its provenance and a definition of what the data, that number is and how it was generated, so that when other people access it, you can download the data from our website, but beside it is what it was the metric that was used, so that then you can engage the community in understanding.
I would like to add two elements. First of all, institutional repositories were mentioned. I think those are really one of the areas which are completely, in that respect, gray right now when it comes to open access, as that they are not being covered. I think that is really an additional problem to what you all said. And secondly, I'm not so much concerned when it comes to generating numbers about Kathleen's reaction as somebody who supports or doesn't support open access, because I know that she all knows this. I'm more concerned about her bosses who basically get these numbers and want quick and simple answers and want a comparison between cost per download in any large publisher package and open access support. So I think that is at least always our aim, to try to support, and I guess yours, I know yours as well, that we are trying to support not only the decision making, but even more so the communication within institutions. And I think that is the biggest problem at this point, that there are administrators that need, because of the breadth of what they do and the limitations of time, simple answers. And this is just not a field, as hopefully we have shown, for simple answers, but rather a complex one where you get navigation points, but not black and white answers.
Hi, Sonja Landy from Elsevier. I'm the Usage Research Manager. I have a question about Counter Relays 5. Have you started implementing that? Because for books there's the unique title requests, which is a way of making sure that the differences in platforms are negated in some way. And the other one is, have you considered using distributed usage logging to contact the institutional repositories and other sites where your book is hosted to collect the usage data?
So, three quick responses to that. Whether we use Counter or not is not actually the issue. We've got an open access work which is put up on platforms all over the world. Very few of them use Counter. So we are going to be aggregating data from all sorts of platforms. The only platforms that use Counter are library-related platforms. So Google Books doesn't use Counter. You know, so Counter, it could be useful, but it's not going to be a solution, because there's lots and lots of other metrics that are being reported. So the issue about the single usage is a great thing if one can start defining what a session is. But for all the reasons that I've said before, it can be so easily gained. It depends on all these other issues which Counter isn't even considering. And the third point, distributed usage. So again, I didn't talk about the Hermes project, but it's there. And what we have done is we've created a bunch of drivers that go to lots and lots of different platforms to take their usage data, to bring it to aggregate it into a single open database, so that anybody could use all of that open source, can implement it themselves, and get usage data from lots of different platforms. It's all open source, so more platforms just build another driver and add it to the mix, and then to assist exactly with that.
I would start with the last point. We have just started working with OpenAir on a project regarding the inclusion of repository usage data on the journal level, but also on the book level where there are repositories, into statistics, into usage stats, with the BASE project at Bielefeld University. So they are trying to recalculate basically usage into counter metrics, which is also a project in itself anyways, but at least it's better than nothing. The other one is same as Rupert said. I think right now, and that's the claim to all platform providers, there are so many that don't provide Counter 5 standards so far themselves. They are all in the process of implementation, and we can only show and aggregate, since we are not hosting the content in a central instance like Elsevier does, for example. We can only show what we are getting out, and I think it is time for the industry, when it comes to technology, to really get together and say, you know, what is not only the next standard, but also what's the timeline of implementation. So how do we speed up these processes, that we don't behave like in the late 90s, but like in 2019 or 20. I think that's a huge issue, and it's getting worse and not better from my perspective when it comes to infrastructure, technical infrastructure.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your time. We'll be here for a few more minutes if you have questions you'd like to come back to us. Thank you.
Thank you.